I found 3 claw marks on the inside of a steel equipment box that night, and I've never been able to explain how something got inside it without ever opening the lid. I didn't tell this story for almost 11 years, and it's not because I thought people would call me crazy. It's because the man who was with me that night asked me never to repeat it while he was alive, and I kept that promise until he passed last spring. Now I figure somebody should know. My name's Dale. I'm a land surveyor. Used to run crews for a timber company before I went independent. I'm the guy who shows up before any logging starts, walks the boundary lines, flags the old growth, makes sure nobody's cutting where they shouldn't. It's quiet work, methodical. You learn to trust your instruments more than your gut, because your gut lies to you in the woods all the time. Every surveyor knows that. Mine didn't lie to me that night, and that's the part I still haven't made peace with. There's a particular kind of quiet I can't sit in anymore. Even now, 11 years later, if a room goes still in just the wrong way, I have to get up and put a sound into it. This was October of 2013, a logging tract about 40 minutes past the last real town in the Coast Range, Oregon. My crew that season was small, just me and a chain man named Walt, 61 years old, built like a fence post, the kind of man who'd worked timber his whole life and treated every job like it was the only one that mattered. Walt didn't talk much, but when he did, it was usually about his daughter's kids or about whatever dog he had at the time. That fall, it was a heeler mix named Boots, half-deaf, completely fearless, who rode in the cab of his truck with her head out the window, no matter the weather. We were camped at a gravel pull-off the company used as a staging area, a single-wide trailer for sleeping, a generator, and 2 steel job boxes the size of coffins where we kept the good equipment, the total station, the GPS units, things you didn't want stolen or rained on. Walt had been doing this longer than I'd been alive, and he had habits I never questioned. He always backed his truck in nose out. He always counted his flagging tape before bed, out loud, like a man saying a rosary. He kept a feed bag of corn out for the deer, not because he liked deer especially, but because, in his words, a quiet woods is a woods that's already decided something. Boots slept in the trailer with us most nights, curled against the door. She snored. Walt complained about it constantly and never once made her sleep outside. It was good work that fall. Cool mornings, color coming into the maples, the kind of physical tide that makes you sleep like the dead. Nothing about that stretch of ground felt like anything but ordinary timber country.
The first night it happened, Boots wouldn't get out of the truck. We'd parked, same as always, and Walt opened the door for her like he did every evening, and she just sat there on the bench seat, ears back, looking at the tree line instead of at him. He laughed it off, figured she'd smelled a bear, maybe an elk that had wandered through. Coyotes, he said, get her riled sometimes too. That was rung 1. The second night, the corn he'd put out for the deer was untouched, and the bag itself had been dragged about 15 feet from where he'd left it, the canvas torn clean through, but nothing eaten. Walt decided it was a bear after all, a big one, getting into things before winter. That was rung 2. Third night, something had pushed over one of the steel job boxes, not tipped, pushed, hard enough to dent the corner against a rock, and the lock was still fastened. Walter went quiet on that one. He didn't offer an explanation at all, which, from him, was worse than any explanation could have been. I watched him walk to his truck after dinner and come back with his rifle, which he'd never once brought to the trailer in 3 seasons of working together. He didn't say why. He just leaned it against the wall by the door and went on eating like he hadn't done anything unusual at all. That night, Boots wouldn't lie down. She sat by the trailer door for hours, facing it, and every so often she let out one low sound, not quite a growl, more like a question she didn't want answered. Friday, we found the deer. It was maybe 200 yards off the staging area, just off the survey line I'd flagged that morning, lying in a shallow drainage with no blood trail leading to it, and no tracks leading away from it in any direction we could find. Not in the soft mud, not in the duff, nothing. Its ribs have been opened from the inside, which Walt said he'd never seen in 30 years of finding kill sites. Whatever had done it hadn't dragged a carcass or fed in the way a cat or a coyote pack would. It looked arranged almost, like something had simply taken what it wanted and walked off without disturbing the ground around it at all. There was a smell out there that I still can't fully describe. Not rot, not animal musk exactly. Something closer to wet hide left in a closed space too long, with a mineral edge underneath it that made the back of my throat tighten. I'd worked timber for 15 years by then. I knew what a bear smelled like, what a dead elk smelled like a week into decomposition. This wasn't either. Walt crouched over that deer for a long time without saying a word. Then he stood up, looked at the tree line, and said the only thing he said the entire walk back to camp. "We're not staying out past dark tonight." I asked him what he thought had done it. He didn't answer. And that not answering is the part that stayed with me longer than almost anything else from that whole week. It started with a sound, just after full dark, somewhere uphill from the trailer. A single deliberate footfall, the kind of weight you only get from something that's not in a hurry. Boots was already up before I'd even registered it, planted at the door, every muscle locked. Then came the smell. That same wet hide mineral smell from the kill site, thick enough now that it seemed to be coming through the trailer wall itself rather than the air outside. I looked through the small window over the sink and saw, low against the dark of the brush, a shape that didn't sit right. Too narrow at the haunches, too long through the shoulder. The kind of silhouette your mind tries on 3 or 4 animals before giving up on all of them. My brain kept offering me bear, and the shape kept refusing the offer. It stepped into the open ground near the job boxes, and that's when it stood, not lunging upward, not stumbling into it. It simply rose, the way you'd stand up from a crouch, weight shifting through hips that bent the way mine do, not the way an animal's do. It was close to 7 feet at full height, dark, coarse fur, heavier through the chest than the waist. Its forelimbs ended in something with fingers, not paws. I watched one of those hands flex once, deliberately, like it was testing the air. Its eyes threw back the little light we had in the flat amber sheet, and they didn't track like an animal's eyes track. They held. It walked to the dented job box, the one it had already pushed over once, and it did something I have never been able to shake. It turned its head and looked directly at the trailer window before it touched the lid, like it was checking whether we were watching before it decided what to do next. That is the moment that still wakes me up some nights. Not the size of it, not the smell, but the fact that it checked. Walt's hand found my shoulder. His grip was steady, but I could feel it wasn't steady because he wasn't afraid. It was steady the way a man holds something on purpose when he's afraid for both of us at once. We backed away from the window without a word, and Boots backed with us, low and silent now in a way she'd never once been in 3 years of knowing her. For a long stretch, nothing happened. No footsteps, no sound at all. And that silence sat heavier on my chest than any noise could have. Walt finally exhaled and said maybe it had moved off. 30 seconds later, something hit the trailer siding hard enough to rattle the dish rack, and Boots came up off the floor in a single motion, every hair raised. It circled. We could hear it test the trailer door, not slamming, testing. A slow press against the frame that made the hinges complain. Then nothing. Then a press at a different point along the wall, like it was working its way around, looking for something that gave. It found the propane-line junction box outside and worked at it for a good minute before giving up, the metal scraping in a way no claw should be able to produce with any precision. At some point, it went quiet long enough that I thought Walt had it gone. He shook his head once, just once, and motioned for me to stay where I was. 40 seconds later, it hit the wall again, exactly where my head had been a moment before I'd shifted away from it. Walt put his free hand flat against my chest at one point, not gripping, just resting there, the way you'd steady someone on a ladder. He didn't say anything reassuring. He just kept his hand there until my breathing matched his, which was the only thing either of us could have done for the other in that moment, and it was enough. It left sometime close to 4 in the morning, not because we did anything, not because of any noise or light. It simply stopped. The footsteps moved off into the timber at the same unhurried pace it had arrived with, and we sat in that trailer for another 2 hours without moving, waiting for a return that never came. When the gray light finally came up enough to risk it, we left in a hurry that had nothing dignified about it. Walt's truck keys slipped out of his hand twice in the gravel before he got it into the ignition. I left half my gear in the staging area and didn't go back for it for 9 days. We didn't speak until we hit the county road, and even then, it was just Walt saying low, "That thing wasn't hunting. It was deciding." It never came after us on the road. It never came after us at all. It simply let us go, the same way it had let the deer's carcass sit untouched after it had taken what it wanted from it, like neither of us had mattered enough in the end to bother with. I still survey timber for a living, but I won't take overnight jobs anymore, not for any amount of money, and I tell new clients that up front so there's no argument about it later. I keep a radio playing low in my truck cab, even when I'm driving alone in daylight, because true silence in deep timber now sits on me like a held breath I can't release until I hear something move. Walt quit field work within the year. He still ran Boots on short walks near his house, but he never took her back into heavy timber again. And he never explained why to anyone but me. The thing he told me near the end was that what scared him most wasn't the size of it or the smell. It was that moment it turned to check the window before it touched the box. He'd hunted that country for 40 years, believing nothing out there was paying that kind of attention. After that night, he never believed it again. What I learned, the thing I didn't know before and do now, is that animal caution and animal intelligence are not the same thing. And most people who haven't seen the difference up close assume they are. A bear that's wary of you is still thinking about food and threat in a straight line. Whatever circled that trailer was thinking about us specifically. What we could see, when we couldn't, where the structure gave and where it didn't. That's not caution, that's strategy. I didn't have a word for that distinction before that October. I have one now, and I wish I didn't need it. I still drive past the turnoff to that gravel pull-off sometimes, on my way to other jobs. I've never once turned down it. Here's something most people don't know about reports like this one. Across dozens of independent Dogman accounts, witnesses consistently describe the same unsettling detail Walt and I saw that night. The creature checking whether it's being observed before it acts. Researchers who've cataloged these encounters call it situational awareness behavior, and it shows up far more often than the growling or the screaming does. It's the quietest detail in almost every account, and it's the one that convinces people who saw it that they weren't looking at an animal at all. If something like this has happened to you, or you just want to hear more accounts like mine, stay close. There are more of these stories coming, and I think you need to hear them.